Today, we'll debate Street Fighter 6. Is modern controls better than classic inputs? With Casey, a accessibility advocate, and Victor, a purist competitor. They're two artificial intelligence personas. Please introduce yourselves.
Oh hey everyone, I'm Casey, game designer by day, commentator by night, and full-time button masher since the days of trying to combo my older brother into letting me have another turn. So yeah, I bleed pixels and caffeine. Look, here's my deal. Games should be for people, not against them. I love Street Fighter, but let's be real. Pulling off a quarter circle motion shouldn't be harder than remembering my Steam password. We've spent decades doing thumb yoga. And for what? Calluses? I say, the more, the merrier. If modern controls mean my grandma can throw a Hadouken with me, you better believe it's game night at her place. So let's embrace change, break down walls, and fill that lobby up with everyone. From trophy hunters to yes, even that little cousin who plays with one finger. Challenge? Sure. But let's make sure it's the competition, not the interface, that tests us. I'm here for fun, sweats, and inclusive beatdowns. Gloves off.
Name's Victor. Been playing fighters since high school, when all I needed was a roll of quarters, a stiff joystick, and a dream of embarrassing my friends at the mall. You know what my idea of accessibility is? Not letting someone cheese you with a single button mash special. I'm all for letting new blood into the scene, just not if it means Ryu now moonlights as an easy-bake oven. Look, I don't brush my teeth with a power tool. I do it the classic way. Technique, precision, maybe a little jaw lock. Why should a Shoryuken be easier than getting out of bed before noon? The struggles make the victory sweet. You want a participation trophy, or do you want the rush of nailing a tight combo after 10,000 failed attempts and a sore thumb? That's the heart of this genre, right there. So yeah, I respect the new crowd, but it'll be defending my quarter circle motions till arthritis takes me. Come at me.
Thank you, guys. Casey and Victor will now present their 3 rounds of arguments.
Absolutely, Victor. You've got some legendary calluses. But let's talk about how modern controls are not just easy mode. They're an evolution that helps fighting games thrive. Whenever a genre introduces accessibility features, the community grows stronger. Remember when FPS games standardized aim assist and adjustable controls? Suddenly, everyone from grandma to grandmaster was in on the action without sacrificing what made shooters great. Now, esports fills stadiums, not just living rooms. Street Fighter was a revolution in the arcade because it invited crowds, but today, crowding around a cabinet isn't realistic for everyone. People have different abilities, time, and hand flexibility. Modern controls let more players join the party, including folks with physical disabilities who literally couldn't participate before. Take the Xbox Adaptive Controller. It brought entire new audiences to gaming without diluting Halo's competitive fire. We gain, don't lose, when the controls become a bridge instead of a gate. Modern controls let more potential victors and Caseys actually sit at the table. The spirit of competition? It gets even richer. Bring on the new blood. I want unpredictable opponents, not carbon copies of the same calloused hands.
All right, Casey, I get where you're coming from. Games should be fun and open to everyone. But hear me out. Fighting games aren't just about the punches on screen. They're about the discipline and satisfaction you get from overcoming a challenge. Remember Dance Dance Revolution? The reason it packed arcades wasn't because it let you hit arrows with a controller in your lap. It was because you had to learn real steps, sweat, and grind to truly shine. Look at chess, sure. There are apps that show you the best moves, but nobody's calling someone a grandmaster because they let the computer do the thinking. It's the hard-won mastery that turns casual interest into lifelong passion. When you boil down classic inputs into easy buttons, you chip away at the identity of fighting games. The thrill of finally nailing that dragon punch under pressure, knowing your practice paid off. If we pave over the skill ceiling too much, we risk turning that rich, competitive ecosystem into shallow waters. I'm all for bringing in new folks, but let's not lose what makes the genre special in the first place. Adapting's fine, but don't erase the mountain just to make it easier to climb.
Oh, Victor, I totally get it. You're basically Street Fighter's gatekeeping Gandalf. You shall not pass unless you can pull off a clean dragon punch. But here's the twist. We're not asking to bulldoze the mountain. We're just making sure there's more than one hiking trail. And not everyone wants a Sherpa-level expedition just to throw a fireball. You say modern controls chip away at the identity of fighting games. But man, fighting games have been patching their identity for decades. Remember parrying in Third Strike? People said it broke the game, then Daigo showed up and turned it into the genre's proudest moment. We adjust, we evolve, we clip those outdated control schemes like trimming split ends. Look, you don't lose your bragging rights by letting newcomers have fun. Classic inputs are still there for those who want thumb acrobatics and frame-perfect flexing. But modern controls let a kid, a casual, or someone with arthritis get in a few rounds and maybe even fall in love with the genre, without having to Google how to move forward and punch at the same time. So rest easy, Vic. Your mountain remains. We're just building a ski lift so more people can appreciate the view and maybe throw you off it every once in a while.
All right, Casey, love the ski lift analogy. But last I checked, you don't hand out gold medals for riding up the slopes and waving at everyone sweating on the trail. I mean, what's next? Calling me a gatekeeping Gandalf because I expect folks to at least read the sign before running into Mordor? Come on. You talk about parrying and Daigo. That was mastery born from getting your teeth kicked in 100 times, not from toggling easy mode. And sure, trim the split ends, but if you cut off all the hair, you're not left with a stylish new look. You're just bald and wondering what happened. Modern controls don't have to mean watering down the game, but let's not pretend mashing a super in with a single tap is the same as landing it under pressure when it counts. Give new players a leg up, sure, but don't turn the genre into a theme park ride where everyone gets a ribbon for showing up. The real thrill is conquering the controls, not outsourcing them to a button that says do cool stuff. Otherwise, we're just spectating our own matches with popcorn. Leave that to the stream monsters.
Victor, you really should consider stand-up. You're almost as sharp with analogies as you are with anti-airs. But hey, nobody's handing out gold medals for simply pressing start. People just want a chance to play without having to sign up for a thumb marathon. You're worried about one-button combos? Trust me, nobody's buying their Evo ticket because they can mash a single button. But there's a world of difference between making things too easy and letting people actually participate. Remember, those stream monsters you mentioned? A lot of them would be players if they didn't feel like the controls were written in ancient Sumerian. Modern controls won't turn Street Fighter into a toddler's splash pool. They're more like floaties for people who haven't learned to swim yet. You still have shark-infested waters for those who dare, promise. And newsflash, even with easier inputs, knowing when to throw a Hadouken and not just how, still separates winners from salty runbacks. In short, I'm all for mountain climbing. I just want everyone to have boots that fit. More players, more hype, same glorious mountain at the top. Next round's on me, Gandalf.
All right, Casey, you'll take that Gandalf title. At least wizards have standards. I'm not asking everyone to earn a PhD in thumb gymnastics before they play, but if we turn the mountain into a moving sidewalk, don't be surprised if the view at the top stops feeling special. Sure, modern controls give people their floaties, but we can't pretend it's the same as learning to swim. Next thing you know, folks want the lifeguard to win Evo too. And honestly, if button mashing was all it took to fill out those stadiums you mentioned, my cat would be a world champion. He does love sitting on the controller, for the record. Look, I'm not saying keep people out. Let's hand out trail maps, climbing gear, heck, maybe even a snack for the journey. But the genre's soul is all about practice, persistence, and that fist pump moment when you finally pull off the real deal. Let's inspire the next Diagos, not just the next lobby full of super spam. So climb on up, boots or no boots. But let's not turn Everest into an escalator. The journey's what makes that windscreen taste so sweet.
Thank you for your speeches. Someone from the audience will now make a question to Casey and Victor.
Hi everyone, I am Priya, longtime fighting game fan and local tournament regular, but also a teacher who likes talking games with her students after class. Casey, I appreciate your focus on accessibility and making fighting games less intimidating for newcomers. But one thing I didn't hear you touch on, do you think introducing modern controls might influence how new players actually learn the deeper mechanics and strategies of Street Fighter? In other words, could there be a risk that these simplified inputs make people focus more on flashy moves at the expense of grasping core fundamentals like spacing, footsies, or meter management? I'd love to hear your thoughts on how modern controls impact long-term player growth, not just initial hype.
Great question, Priya. And shout out to all those students you've probably styled on after the bell rang. I totally get the worry. Modern controls can make it easier to focus on landing those flashy moves right away, which might mean some newcomers are thinking more about how do I do this cool combo than why did my jump in just get punished again. But the thing is, fundamentals are always what win games in the end. Modern controls just get people past the initial "can I even play" barrier. Once they're actually participating and having fun, curiosity and competition naturally nudge them toward learning things like spacing, anti-airs, and resource management, especially once they start running up against players who read their habits or whiff punish them for free. Plus, if you look at other genres that added accessibility, like racing games with driving assists, plenty of players start with the training wheels on, but as they get more invested, they bump up the challenge themselves. Street Fighter 6 even lets people switch between modern and classic inputs, so as soon as someone wants to master execution, that's one menu away. So I see modern controls as an invitation to start the journey, not a shortcut to skip the important stuff. The real competitive fire tends to push people to dig deeper, no matter how they started.
Hi again, it's Priya. Victor, I noticed the conversation's mostly focused on control complexity and its effects on competitive integrity, but one thing I haven't heard you address. How do you see the role of modern controls when it comes to growing the local FGC scene, like tournaments at arcades or colleges? Do you think insisting on classic inputs might make it harder to attract and keep new community members, especially when other contemporary games are so quick to onboard new players? Or do you feel a certain level of challenge is key to building the kind of dedicated communities that have kept fighting games alive all these years? Would love to hear your take on that balance between tradition and growth at the grassroots level.
Great question, Priya. And first off, respect for being both a teacher and a tournament regular. That's a combo most folks can't pull off. As for the local FGC, I'll admit, if we want the scene to grow, we can't treat newcomers like they're intruding on a secret society. There's gotta be a way in, or else you end up with the same dozen diehards forever. Modern controls definitely lower that barrier, and I get why they might look attractive for new blood, especially if nobody wants to get demolished before they even learn to throw a punch. But at the same time, some level of challenge is what forges those classic FGC friendships and rivalries. The "remember when I finally landed my first combo on you" stories. If everything's made ultra accessible from the start, you might get more people to try the game, but not necessarily stick around, because there's less room for those meaningful skill leaps that hook you for good. For me, the sweet spot is offering modern controls as an introduction, like a friendly hand outstretched, but also keeping clear pathways and incentives for folks to move up to classic inputs if they really want to test themselves or compete at a higher level. This way, the scene stays open, but still gives people something to strive for, which I think is the real adhesive in any grassroots community. So, it's about balance. Don't scare people off, but don't drain out the reasons to stay and level up either.
The debaters now have a minute to talk about something they regret not bringing up to the discussion.
Haha, Priya. Now that you mention it, I'm honestly kicking myself for not bringing up how modern controls finally let me trash talk my friends who don't have time to learn fireballs. Now they're out of excuses, and I'm still losing half my matches. So maybe I should have argued for a button that gives me frame data on demand. And Victor, I have to give you credit for the cat argument. I mean, if your cat starts topping local brackets with modern controls, you'll be the first to sign her up for Evo merch and a sponsorship. But until then, I think I'll take my chances fighting the humans, and just hope you don't start coaching the family pets for tournament play.
All right, Priya, you got me thinking. I definitely missed my chance to talk about how classic inputs kept my hand-eye coordination sharp enough to untangle last year's Christmas lights in under 3 hours. If that's not a hidden benefit for the genre, I don't know what is. And Casey, I've got to call out your ski lift analogy. Look, if everyone gets to the top without breaking a sweat, the only view up there is all the dropped combos from altitude sickness. Next time, let's just add a button for instant tournament wins. Everyone gets a trophy and a coupon for carpal tunnel cream on the way out.
Thank you, folks. Let's go over to our judges.
Casey's scores. 1. Clarity and structure. 9 out of 10. Casey organized arguments logically, responded directly to questions, and maintained clear focus throughout. Points were easy to follow, transitions were smooth, and analogies, like the hiking trail and ski lift, helped clarify complex ideas. Less than details greater than. Casey consistently presented points in a way that was accessible both to laypeople and experienced players. The only minor deduction comes from occasionally veering into humor for extended periods, slightly reducing precision, but overall, clarity remained high. Less than out of details greater than 2. Use of evidence and real-life examples. 8 out of 10 Casey referenced historical examples, like aim assists in FPS games and the Xbox Adaptive Controller, to support claims that accessibility does not harm competitive depth. Less than details greater than these references enhance credibility and drew strong parallels to the current debate, though a little more detail about how modern controls function in high-level play could have strengthened the argument further. Less than out of details greater than 3. Engagement and rebuttal strength. 9 out of 10 Casey engaged directly with Victor's points, responded thoughtfully to audience questions, and used humor to keep the tone engaging. Less than details greater than Casey provided quick, pointed rebuttals, e.g., responses to the cat argument and Gandalf analogy, and skillfully redirected banter back into substance. Minor deductions for occasional over-reliance on playfulness instead of deep technical refutation. Less than out of details greater than Victor scores. 1. Clarity and structure. 8 out of 10 Victor presented arguments coherently, with well-paced delivery, and guided listeners through analogies that made technical points relatable. Less than details greater than Victor's responses were clear and structured, though occasionally analogies, like the mountain or sidewalk, were overextended, slightly muddying the core point for less familiar audiences. Less than out of details greater than 2. Use of evidence and real-life examples. 7 out of 10 Victor referenced Dance Dance Revolution, chess, and his own experience in local scenes to illustrate why mastery and challenge are critical. Less than details greater than while examples were apt and entertaining, they leaned heavily on sentiment and tradition more than direct competitive data or specific SF6 examples. Some analogies, while humorous, were less grounded in the specifics of fighting games evolution. Less than out of details greater than 3. Engagement and rebuttal strength. 8 out of 10 Victor responded to Casey's points with witty counter-arguments, directly engaged the audience, and showed respect while being persuasive. Less than details greater than he diffused Casey's analogies with humor, provided balanced answers to audience concerns, and maintained the debate's energy. A minor deduction for sometimes conflating input execution with overall skill expression. A slightly firmer distinction could have helped. Less than out of details greater than.
What are your opinions about the debate? What would you like to see ICE debate next? Keep questioning.